Hey, everybody. Um, we're going to get started in just a couple minutes. We always begin on time and end on time, so we've got just a couple minutes, and then we'll go ahead and get started. I am extremely excited about this. I will tell you that there is a slight possibility that I attempted to cram way too much in here. And because I am going to make sure that I honor your time and that we do not go past that, that hour mark. So, but we are going to look at the business plan, and we're also going to look at some items from 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So I'm very excited, very excited. So 1 minute and we will get started. If you don't, make sure you have a pen and paper to take some notes. All right, it is 10:30, so welcome. So we're gonna go ahead and dive in. I will say that I know some of you are on video, some of you are listening to it on the phone. Either any of those are fine. We will make sure that we are done no later than an hour from now. I know we're all in different time frames. And again, I got very excited about today, and there's huge possibilities that I've got way more to cover than we actually have time for. So we're going to move fairly fast. If there's something that I cover and you're not sure about, feel free to unmute yourself and ask that question. And so again, feel free to unmute yourself, ask the question. Depending on if it's going to apply to the majority of people on the call, you might hear me say, you know what, that's great, or let's table that. I'll come back to that. I'll make sure I, make a note, and then that may be an individual conversation. So, all right. So you may want to pull up your email. In your email, and you won't necessarily, so if you're not in front of your computer, it's not the end of you're calling in, it's not the end of the world. We did email you out a couple of things regarding this call this morning. And as I touch on those pieces, I'll say that's in your email, that's in your email. That way you know what's there or not. This is being recorded. So if you, and we're going to send it out after the fact. So if there's something that we cover too fast or you're not quite sure, make a note where, where are we at time frame. You can go back and listen to that. So, all right, so that's a little bit of the housekeeping, and we are going to dive in. Most of you are in my MAPS coaching schedule, and yet in case you're not, we have a coach that's out sick right now, so he had invited, or we've actually invited his clients to this call. So just in case you're not in my schedule, you're not sure who I am, Olivia Roberts, MAPS coach. And all right, that's all the housekeeping items, and then we are going to dive in. All right, so number one, what you're seeing here on the screen, I have made some adjustments, and I will continue to make adjustments on our, unfortunately, on what, or fortunately, maybe not unfortunately, on what we're going to be doing over these next few weeks. I will always let you know what adjustments I'm making. It's not, we didn't adjust any days. It's basically going to be every Thursday between now and December 17th. We will not meet on next week during Mega Camp, and we will not meet the week of Thanksgiving, because I'm assuming that nobody wants to be with me. Well, maybe a couple of you, family members that would want to be with me on Thanksgiving. Otherwise, just plan for this every Thursday. If I make adjustments, it's just as I get further into this, I want to make sure that these really mesh with us creating that business plan, because we always want to make sure we're starting with the end in mind. So right here, this is going to go out. One of the things that I realized is we all may have different editions of the book. And so we may not be 100% on what page, based on that original email that I sent out for the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So you can screenshot this, and I will be emailing it out to you as well, so that like to read up to where by what day we're meeting. Now, some of us are going to read the entire book and then just come back and cover those pages. Any way that you do that is fine. All right. And then, and yet today we're going to be going through the first, these like up to like the first 70, 73 pages. All right. And then this is what everybody's waiting for, I am sure. So this is the MAPS business plan. Now, again, I know we've emailed this out to you. We included it on the email that we sent out this morning. There's 2 parts to this. The first part is,
Olivia,
yes.
I can't read it. It's too blurry.
Yes. That's okay, because this is, yeah, that's just because
Top secret. Top secret.
Top secret, right? Let's see. Is that any better or worse?
It's the same.
Okay, and it's probably just because that's a picture. It'll be more clear in your email. This is the, again, parts 1 and 2, or let me go back to part 1. There's a couple of things that I wanted to point out to you guys here, because when you get this, some of you are going to go, what? And then others of you have been tracking it and it's going to make sense. These are all, part 1 is going to be all of your 2020 numbers. Now, some of it you're going to say, well, I don't have all of my 2020 numbers. It's not complete. Go ahead and put your pendings on here as closed. We know that it's not exact, and yet it's going to give us a good view of your business to start planning. Because if everybody writes this number, we want to make sure that we have our entire business plan together no later than November 1st, okay? There's pieces that we're going to talk about today, because that way you're sorting and bringing things in throughout between now and November. So on this particular page, it's going to talk about, where did you get your business? How many transactions you got to past clients? How many of your transactions with past clients? And then there's a line that says cost. So if you think about the cost, if you don't have that, it would be great. You might go back through and see what you've spent money on, and or if you're running your P&Ls, the cost will be in there. If you don't know, don't stress about it. That's something that, we'll implement in your business. It's something that we do want to know in the future. And then, so that means if you don't have the cost, everybody should know how much money you made from that source. So for instance, you can go back to your closings and go, okay, I had 5 closings from my Sphere, and this is how much GCI I got. You're going to plug that in. And then, of course, if you don't have the cost, you can't have the net, and yet we'll at least have your GCI. Make sense? And it'll make more sense when you look at that form. And then page 2, it's going to talk about, like, what does your database look like right now? How many contacts, etc. There are going to be some things in here that you don't know. If you don't know, I'm going to ask that you get really technical and do something that we call guesstimate. Just guess. Get as close as you can, but we want something in that, okay? Then part 2. Now, I am going to ask that part 1, if you guys will make a note, we don't have individual coaching calls next week because of Mega Camp. I am going to ask, though, that before we meet again, so in 2 weeks, you will have emailed me at least part 1. I'm actually going to even say that you can start working on part 2, and yet part 1 is the piece that we want, because when we come back, we're going to be talking about the lead generation model, and then we're going to talk about the organizational model. All of those are going to play into what our goal is for 2021. Because a lot of times we go, you know what, my intent is to close 200 units. And you go, okay, how many did you close this year? 50. Now, can you go from 50 to 200? Possibly, if you've already got those people hired, right? But if you don't even have an admin, that's probably not going to work. So we're going to talk about a little bit of that today. So whatever number you're looking at profitability, we're going to look at the organizational, who needs to be in your world in order to make that piece happen, right? So again, that's part 2. All right. Now, we're going to dive into the 7 habits of highly effective people really quickly. Some of you haven't read it yet. That is okay. Some of you jumped on this call. You're in Kobe's schedule. That's perfectly okay. I am going to go over some things. And if you do want to chime in, you have read it, whether it's now or in the past, and you want to add something, please feel free to do so. I'd love for this to be more of a conversation. And the reason why I wanted to go ahead and cover it, even though some of you may not have read it, is because it's going to go hand in hand with us creating that life by design that we're all looking for, right? So in the 7 habits of highly effective people, we're going to just touch base on a couple of pieces. Give me 1 second. I got to move some of my chat boxes out of the way. So when we look at paradigms and principles, and I will say this, anybody on here, show of hands, ever read a word before you learned how to say it? Maybe just me. So if I slip up and say paradigm, you know it's because when I was in 3rd or 4th grade, when I was learning how to read, I'd read that so many times before I ever heard anybody say that. It's the same for me with hors d'oeuvres. It's a weird word. And whenever I read it as, a young kid, the way that I read that word and the way that it's pronounced, completely different. So sometimes it still slips out. So bear with me. So paradigms and principles. So our paradigms, correct or incorrect, are the sources of our attitudes and behaviors and ultimately our relationship with each other. And that's a quote from Stephen Covey. An example of when we think of paradigm, it's kind of the same as an assumption, right? So this great story in one of the 7 habits of highly effective people. And I want to see if you can hear yourself in here anywhere. A store manager overhears one of his salesperson say to a customer, "No, we haven't had any for some weeks now, and it doesn't look like we're going to be getting any soon." The manager, shocked to hear those words, rushes to the customer as she's walking out and says, "That's not true." The customer gives him an odd look and just walks out. So the manager confronts the salesperson and says, "Never, ever, ever say we don't have something. If we don't have it, say we've ordered it and it's on its way." So tell me, what did the customer want? The salesperson said rain. Okay, yeah, that's funny. I'll get it later. How many times have you made an assumption similar to that store manager, right? It's easy to do because we all see things in different ways. We all have different paradigms or frames of reference, like eyeglasses through which we see the world. We see the world not as it is, but as we are, or sometimes as we are conditioned to see it. The more we are aware of our basic paradigms or assumptions and the extent to which we've been influenced by our experiences, the more we can take responsibility for those paradigms, right? We can examine them. We can test them against reality. We can change them if necessary and listen to others and be open to their perceptions. It becomes obvious that if we want to make relatively minor changes in our lives, that we can focus on our attitudes and our behaviors. But if we want to make significant quantum changes, we need to work on our basic paradigms, the way we view ourselves and the world around us. This is why we're doing this book at the end of the year with our business planning, because when we think about let's say grow in our business. And if our paradigm is, if I bring somebody on, I've got to babysit them. Is that paradigm maybe a little bit limiting? So then we have to examine, wait a minute, is it because we're not bringing the right person on? And what do I need to know or learn and to influence people so that when I bring somebody in, we have a quantum leap versus right? So there's all kind of, or maybe we have a paradigm that I can't handle any more business, or whatever that looks like. We all have some, some type of paradigm. We want to explore that through these working together in the 7 habits of highly effective people, and then with our business plan. So principles. I love
So
this.
Olivia, did I miss, or did you say what paradigm stands for?
It's assumption. It's your view of the world, basically.
So I heard it last week, and it might make a better resignation. It's when you've accepted an idea.
I like that.
Now you've had a paradigm shift whenever you've accepted a new idea, and now you said, well, now I'm going to do 200 units. So now you've accepted I'm going to do 200 next year. What do I got to do to get there?
Yeah, who do I have to become? No,
That's right. And so it's who do I got to become? So my paradigm is I've got to be a different Avery next year than I was this year. And so I didn't know if that helped in or not.
It helps me. Anybody else? Does that kind of resonate when you've accepted that idea? It's kind of like, I love that, because it makes me think of, like, if you're thin and you've been thin your entire life, and somebody calls you fat, you're probably like, but I know I'm thin. Now, if you've ever had a weight issue, and maybe your paradigm is that I am fat, right? If we don't have a shift, no matter how much weight we lose, right? You still have that paradigm that I'm fat, whatever that is. I love that. So it's when you accept the idea. So have you accepted the idea that you can't do anymore? Have you accepted the idea that your family has to suffer if you do X, right? So love that, Avery. So now let's look at principles. Love this quote. It is impossible for us to break the law. We can only break ourselves against the law. So for you guys, it makes me think about what we talk about in Bold, and we talk about, whether we believe in gravity or not, if we are on a tall building and we step off, we are going down. It's just the law. It's a natural law. Principles are inarguable. That is, they are self-evident. For example, you can never have enduring trust without trustworthiness. That's a natural law. Natural laws, like gravity in this example. Principles, we talk about that. We've got respect, honesty, kindness, integrity, and fairness. These things control the consequences of our choices. Just as you get bad air and bad water when you consistently violate the environment, so also in trust, right? The glue of relationships is destroyed when you're consistently unkind and dishonest to people. And I would even say sometimes it's consistently unkind or dishonest. I said I was going to be there at 10. It's 10:05. That doesn't mean, it doesn't mean that you intentionally lied, but do you need to now clear it up? Do you need to now make certain you don't do it again? Because that just starts eroding their trust. It looks small, it feels small, and yet if I can't trust you to be here when you said, because your word's so important, am I going to trust when you say the next piece, right? Now, we're all going to slip up and make mistakes. It's not about being perfect. It's about owning up to it and having the conversation and renewing that word. That's that integrity piece. For those of you that have started reading the book, or you already, maybe you remember Aesop's fable, The Goose and the Golden Egg. If you don't, read the book and you'll get it. The moral of that fable has modern application. So really quickly, the goose and the golden egg, we all probably know that. The goose is laying golden eggs. The farmer's all excited about it. And then he goes, wait, if I kill the goose, I can go ahead and get all my gold out at one time. He kills the goose. There's no more. Now, not only was there no more eggs there because the goose, he can't ever get any more golden eggs. True effectiveness is a function of two things, and this is what's on the screen. That which is produced, the golden egg, and the producing asset or capacity to produce, the goose. Now, one of the things that really stood out to me as I'm preparing, and I'll speak, this is for me, and I know that this will resonate with many of you, is we get busy, we're doing. I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with those in my world, in my coaching schedule of, do you have personal on your schedule? Do you have personal on your schedule? Because like that foolish farmer, we often emphasize short-term results at the expense of long-term prosperity because we abuse ourselves. Effectiveness lies in the balance. So the P stands for production of the desired result. So the production of the desired result, which is the golden eggs, right? PC stands for production capability. Production capability. The ability or the asset that produces the golden egg. You are, right? You are the asset that produces the golden egg. Those people that work with you, your customers, that's the asset. So what is the production capability, right? Now, in spite of the obvious need for balancing that P and PC, we frequently neglect and abuse physical, financial, and human resources, right? For instance, we don't properly maintain our bodies. We don't, the environment, our valuable physical possessions. Of equal concern, we overlook relationships, neglecting kindnesses and courtesies. On the other hand, PC investments such as exercising, eating properly, increasing skills, developing relationships contribute to our quality of life. Relationships are stronger, finances are more secure, and physical assets last longer. So we want to be thinking about production and PC. And there are some times when we get so wrapped up in production that we're not taking care of ourselves, which is like killing the golden egg, right? We've all been there where we get so burnt out we can't do anything, right? All right, so the seven habits center on timeless and universal principles: personal, interpersonal, managerial, and organizational effectiveness. So if we look at the principles, these are the principles that that 7 habits are based on. The principle of continuous learning, of self-re-education, the discipline that drives us toward the values we believe in. Such constant learning is required in today's world. Continuous learning is part of what keeps us feeling empowered in our relationships and accomplished in our work. Technology is constantly changing. Real estate, right? The world is constantly changing. Are you willing to be left behind? That's one of the reasons that you guys are on this call today, right? Continuous learning. Number 2, service, giving oneself to others, of helping to facilitate other people in their endeavors. Staying positive and optimistic. The principle of staying positive and optimistic, radiating positive energy, and avoiding the 4 emotional cancers. Write these down, especially, or if you have your book, highlight these. The 4 emotional cancers: criticizing, complaining, comparing, and competing. Criticizing, complaining, comparing, and competing. Those are the 4 emotional cancers. And then the principle of affirmation of others, treating people as proactive individuals who have great potential. So are we treating people like they are big enough, whole enough, strong enough? Now, personally, I'll tell one on myself. For a long time, and I still am challenged by being a rescuer or a savior. Oh, I'll do that for you. I'll teach you. Wait a minute. They're whole and complete. They can figure it out. Now, that doesn't mean I'm not there to support them, and yet I don't have to take on that I've got to be the savior, right? A good example of this was when I first got into real estate back in 06 or 07. This was around this time. I was showing a client houses, and they walk in to a dump, and I tell them it's a dump, and guess what? They fall in love. And I'm thinking, oh God, you don't need to buy this house. This is a terrible house. And then, and I'm like, okay, maybe we can get some of this stuff fixed in inspection. So we do our inspections. Sellers will not do anything And so I call them up like, hey, they won't do anything. We can get out of this contract. They're like, what do you mean? We've already looked at, my husband can do this. We can do this. And I'm thinking, you're going to be so mad at me because I'm selling you a crappy house. Thankfully, my paradigm shifted because I was starting to get to the point where they probably wanted to fire me because here they've fallen in love and I'm talking about how crappy it is. I had forgotten that my role as a realtor was to make sure they knew everything they needed to know to make the best decision for their family and for them. And they still live in that house to today, by the way. It was the right house. They loved that house. Who was I? Because I was basing it on me and my paradigm. So we got to make sure, right? So it became, my mantra became, you know what? My job is to make sure they have all the knowledge they need to know to make a great decision, and they're grown-ups. And I'm out. Like they get to make that decision. So
that ain't the way you usually say that, though.
How do I usually say that?
For y'all this week, don't listen. She says they're grown-ass people. They're grown-ups. They can make their own decision.
I do say that.
and I've heard a lot of real estate said, I'm going to tell my client not to buy this. And that's not your job.
Yeah. What is it that they want? Do they have all the information they need to make the best decision for their family? Okay. So then we've got, so treating them like they have great potential. And then balance. So the principle of balance, that is the ability to identify our various roles and to spend appropriate. So Gary talks about this as counterbalance, because I think people hear balance and they think everything's going to be equal. No, that's not. It's that counterbalance. So appropriate amounts of time in and focus on all the important roles and dimensions of our life. Success in one area of our life cannot compensate for neglect or failure in another area of our life. I love what Rumer Godden says. Everyone is a house with 4 rooms: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. Unless we go into every room every day, even if only to keep it aired out, we are not a complete person. So are we going into every area every day? And then spontaneity and serendipity, the ability to experience life with a sense of adventure, excitement, and fresh rediscovery instead of trying to find a serious side to things that have no serious side. Consistent, and then principle 7, the principle of consistent self-renewal and self-improvement in the 4 dimensions of one's life: physical, spiritual, mental, and social and emotional. Now, if you think about the one thing, the 7 circles, those 7 circles, physical, spiritual, mental, and social, Gary's broken them a bit more, right, to business and job and personal finance. And yet, right, are we looking at renewal and improvement in the dimensions of our life? Okay. So that's what the book is based upon. And I'm going to quickly go through these, and then I want to hear from you guys. When we think of effective and ineffective people, can you read this or is it blurry? It's good. Okay. This is also in your book, right? So habit 1, be proactive. The definitions of these to me is very powerful. Proactive people do more than take initiative. They recognize that they are responsible for their own choices and have the freedom to choose based on principles and values rather than on moods or conditions. Proactive people are agents of change. I don't feel like lead generating today. Well, am I a proactive person? Then I'm going to leave my feelings out of it and I'm going to do it anyways, right? I don't feel like exercising today. I got to tell you guys, I don't ever, I feel like it until it's time to do it, right? You're like, I called my friend the other day and I said, we're going to ride bikes at 6 a.m. I'll ride over to your house. We'll ride our bike. I can be finished at 17, be at the house at 7:30, have a shower, be on my first call at 8:30. My alarm went off. Why was this a good plan? Now, then you got out of bed and you go and I had fun and it was a blast. I'm so excited I did it, right? Are we being proactive versus reactive? Reactive people don't take responsibility for their own lives. They feel victimized, a product of circumstances, their past, other people. They do not see themselves as the creative force of their lives. Watch our language. If we find ourselves saying something like an outside force caused it, well, they got my schedule off. In the minute, what you just did is gave your power away. It seems like a small thing. No, they did what they did. You chose to leave your schedule. Sometimes it's appropriate to do that, and sometimes it isn't. And either way, it is a choice you made. The cool part is when I look at it as a choice that I make, I can then choose a different choice. If it's external, I'm just stuck being reactive to whatever somebody else has lined up for me. Habit 2, begin with the end in mind. Again, this is why we're working on our business plan, and you're actually going to get an email from me because we're going to be looking at what do we want 5 years from now? What do we want when we're 90? And then backing that up to what we want next year, right? So always begin with the end in mind. Individuals, families, teams, and organizations shape their own future by creating mental vision and purpose for any project, large or small, personal or interpersonal. They identify and commit themselves to the principles, relationships, and purposes that matter most to them. Sometimes I think we say begin with the end in mind, and we feel like we have to have all the answers. Sometimes it's what you don't want. So for instance, one of the things that I know I don't want is to be that person that, look, I worked at Walmart. I have no problem with somebody that works at Walmart. I don't want to be the 70-year-old that works at Walmart as a door greeter because they can't feed themselves. Well, then what am I doing to set myself up? Because guess what? If I quit working and I don't have money or a plan so that I don't have to do that, every day I'm just getting closer to that age. What is the end in mind? What would have to happen so that didn't happen? Ineffective people begin with no end in mind. These people lack personal vision and have not developed a deep sense of personal meaning and purpose. They have not paid the price to develop a mission statement, and they live life based on society's values instead of their own chosen self-values. Gary talks about in the CEO, I Think Like a CEO, sometimes I think we think we're not visionary. Oh, that's not my gift. It is a learned thing. You can learn to have the vision. You can do the research. That's a learned skill. So if you feel like right now, you lack that vision, okay, write that down. Let's get on a path to start learning what that looks like for you. Habit 3 of effective people, put first things first. People who put first things first organize and execute around their most important priorities. Whatever the circumstances, they live and are driven by the principles they value the most. Whatever the circumstances. Ineffective people put second things.
Olivia?
Yep.
How do you know, I know you know the answer to this, but how do you know what your priorities are? How can you tell?
You have to create them.
No, what I mean, if you're going back and looking, like last month, what did I make my priorities? Mm-hmm. And what does Gary say? You can look at your calendar and see what you did instead of what you're supposed to be doing, and you can look at your checkbook. Because them two things will tell you what's important in your life.
Well, think of it this way, a lot of us know what our priorities are.
Or what are they supposed to be?
Well, or even if you think about it, so people go, my priority is my family, my kids, my da-da-da. And then you go, when was the last time you spent quality time, or you went out on a date, or you did this with your spouse, significant other, etc.? Well, then you're not putting first things first.
Yeah, don't ask that question in public. Ask it by yourself, because you liable to break down, start crying. You realize what you give up.
Yeah. When you think about your my priority is making this much money so that I can do X, Y, Z. Money's just a tool that allows us to do things. It's a scorecard, right? And then you're not lead generating properly to make that happen. Well, then you're putting second things first, and that's ineffective. So these people are crisis managers who are unable to stay focused on high leverage tasks because their preoccupation with circumstances, their past, and other people. They are caught up in the thick of thin things and are driven by urgent matters. Well, I just got an offer in. I got to let them know. Wait a minute. You weren't even like, do you think there's a difference between letting them know right now and in an hour? Now, if there is, maybe your market's moving that fast. Okay, now you've made a choice. If it's just because you are a fixer and you want to see like the difference of what that really is. Habit 4, effective people think win-win. People who think win-win have a frame of mind and heart that seeks mutual benefit and mutual respect in all interactions. They think in terms of abundance and opportunity, in terms of we, not me. They continually seek to build more trusting relationships with others by making deposits into the emotional bank account. Now, hear this. We make deposits into the emotional bank account because we are also going to make some subtractions. A win-win doesn't mean I'm going to lay down and do, like I have no backbone, or I'm going to let you treat me however. It is this a win-win? Am I conversing in a manner that does that? Ineffective people think win-lose or lose-win. These people have a scarcity mentality and they see life as a zero-sum game. They have ineffective communication skills and make withdrawals from other people's emotional bank accounts, resulting in a defensive mentality and adversarial feelings. And then habit 5 of effective people: seek first to understand, then be understood. Right, KW folks, that sound familiar. When we listen with the intent to understand others rather than with the intent to reply, we begin true communication and relationship building. Opportunities to then speak openly and to be understood come much more naturally and easily. Seeking to understand tasks, consideration, seeking to be understood takes courage. So seeking to understand takes consideration. Seeking to be understood takes courage. Effectiveness lies in balancing or blending the two. Have you ever said, we're not raising hands, or have you ever heard somebody say, well, I'm just going to let it lie, but you're really upset or angry about it? Well, you have not stepped into that seeking first to understand and then be understood. We think, oh, I'll get over, it's not a big deal. Yeah, it is. You need to have that conversation, because the conversations, right, fierce conversations, the conversations we don't have, that's where the relationship starts derailing, because we just think, oh, it's got to be nice all the time. There is a respectful way to have a conversation of, hey, I didn't really like when you did that. Did I miss something? Maybe I misunderstood. But actually having that conversation. Ineffective people seek first to be understood. These people state first their points of view, which are based solely on their autobiography and motives, without attempting to understand others first. They blindly prescribe without first diagnosing the problem. You did blah, blah, blah to me, and you did, right? Of course, I've never done that, except for a few hundred times. Are you backing up and going, wait a minute, what do I not know? What am I not taking into consideration? Now, this is the thing, though, is you then have to have the conversation, right? You can't just have it in your mind. Oh, I get it. They were stressed. Well, no. Hey, I feel like you were stressed when you did X, Y, Z. Is there something that we need to talk about, right? Habit 6 of effective people: synergize. Synergistic people seek the third alternative with others. Not my way, not your way. It's a third way that is better than either one of us would ever come up with individually. Synergy is the fruit of respecting, valuing, and even celebrating one another's differences. It's about solving problems, seizing opportunities, and working out differences. It's the kind of creative cooperation of, instead of 1 plus 1 is 2, it's 1 plus 1 is 3 or 11 or 111 or more. When you think about, when you bring in that admin into your world, or that, do you have synergy? Is it taking you from 1 plus 1 is 2 of us? No. What we are now building, it's the synergy. We're able to create, what did they say? I love this. It would, way better than either one of us come up with individually, or are we just both operating as an individual and we're not in that synergy?
Well, that's the definition of a mastermind. You put two minds together and you come up with a third one.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I do have a question, Olivia, on habit 5. You're talking about you need to have those conversations. There are some conversations that you just kind of automatically know that if you have that, it's going to significantly damage the relationship. And I think sometimes you have to decide if it's worth it.
Without knowing a specific example, I'm going to actually say that you're probably stuck in the paradigm of you've already decided that. Because if we shifted the paradigm and said, is there a way to have this conversation where they could actually hear X, or what's the end result that we're looking to have? If we shifted that paradigm, we may be able to have a different conversation with them or a different opening. Now, that's so again, without knowing specifics, I'll give an example. I have a brother who, though I love dearly, when he talks to me, I want to stab him in the eye. And it is.
So can you weed out the brothers you're not talking about?
That's right. It will become very clear in a second.
I know who you're talking about.
I know. So one of the things is every time he gets around me, he tells me what I need to do. So I run, and he's like, oh, you should go blah, blah, blah. And I sell real estate, and you should da, da, da. And I'm thinking, you don't know how to do either one of those things. You've never done it. Why are you telling me what to do? And it was very frustrating until I had a paradigm shift. Now, because that's where it looks like I could have had the conversation with him and said, hey, don't tell me how to do stuff. What I realized where my paradigm shifted was that was his way of coming from contribution. So now when he starts telling me that stuff, I hear, I love you, I want to help. And it doesn't bother me. And now, because from a different paradigm, he starts telling me that, I go, you know what? That's pretty interesting. Check it out. And we move on, right? So it was the paradigm that I was standing in that was putting the buffer between us. So so I don't know if that helps, Marcia. It's just, we might have to look at what is our paradigm coming into the conversation.
Yeah, I think I'll have to talk to you about that one privately, because it involves a best friend who is also a client. Yeah.
So there are times, right? And then there's times where we're having different conversations. So like, am I looking to maintain that relationship? That's going to be a different conversation than I'm firing you, or I'm releasing you to industry, or I'm releasing you to not be my friend anymore, right? There's different types of conversations. So habit 6 that we'll end up with, so instead of synergetic, ineffective people compromise, fight, or flight. Ineffective people believe the whole is less than the sum of parts. They try to clone other people in their own image. Differences in others are looked upon as threats. And then the last habit, effective people, habit 7, sharpen the saw. Effective people constantly renew themselves in the 4 basic areas of life: physical, social, emotional, mental, spiritual. This increases their capability to live all of the other habits effectively. When you are tired and run down and drained, think about it. You ever had a day where everybody you ran into was, I probably have to give some money to KW Cares, everybody you ran into was an asshole? You ever had that day? You might want to consider that it was what you were bringing to the party, right? That you may be like, you're tired, you don't have energy, you're not refilling yourself, you're killing your golden goose, and that's why you're accounting, because right on another day you have everything's doing great, and right, what are you bringing to the party? Ineffective people, they wear out the saw. Ineffective people lack a program of self-renewal and self-improvement, and eventually lose the cutting edge they may have once had. Okay, so all of that said, so the 7 habits, you're going to get an email, or in your email, you have a 7 habits profile. I'm going to ask that you guys fill it out. This isn't necessarily something to share. This is to just see where you land on these habits right now. When we complete the book, so in like December, we're going to have you take another assessment to help gauge your progress, right? And that way you can kind of see where you're making movement forward, that type of thing. So, okay. Any questions about the 7 habits or any ahas or things that you'd like to say before we jump into what the business plan of what we're going to look at today?
Yeah, Olivia, I did not see where I have that sent to me. So can you resend that to me?
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
And if anybody else didn't get it this morning, if you want to just shoot me an email, we can make sure, and then we'll double check. Yeah, Avery, we'll send that out. Okay. So we talked about today was going to be the business plan. Part of the business plan is making sure that we have the economic model set correctly. So I'm going to touch briefly on this, and then again, in your email, we're going to look at some numbers. In your email is a really cool Google Drive folder that you can plug in some numbers, and it's automatically going to tell you based on that and based on this, you need these many appointments. That's only a part of it. Then we'll look at, we won't do this today, but we will then look at your lead generation model, because that sometimes we know how many appointments we have. We don't know how many leads we need to get to the appointment. And so we're focused on appointments and we can't figure out why our lead generation isn't working. Well, it's because we don't have enough leads. So we got to make sure, how do we create that? Okay. So really quickly, when we look at the economic model, the 4 elements of the economic model is gross closed income, GCI. We say gross commission income most of the time. That's cost of sales. That's the amount of money paid to a listing specialist and the commission split paid to a buyer specialist, plus referral fees, royalties, and what you pay your company, okay? That's what that means. Operating expenses. These are all the other costs of doing business, including marketing, rent, salaries, equipment, supplies, advertising. And that's going to equal your net income. That's the amount of profit your sales business earns. Now, if you have not attended it, I'm going to highly suggest that there is a course, September, October. You'll have it in your email, but it's the Profit Camp with Jeannie Osnes. If you have any questions about this piece, sign up and go to the Profit Camp. That's one of the basics, is that are we profitable, right? Okay. Now, I threw this in. Now, this is from the Business Planning Clinic, by the way. There's also, you're going to go to one, but typically we don't start having those until October, November. Way too late for us to have this plan. When they have one, go, because it'll wrap up what we're doing. You'll get it again, right? It'll be good. And yet you can also go on KDB Connect and download these slides and all this and get all of this information if you want to. I threw this in because I thought it was pretty interesting. When we look at the MREA economic model numbers, your average commission. So really quickly, if you want to go, okay, based on these models, if I want to net $1 million, well, what's my average commission? If it's 1,000, you need 2,500 units. If it's 2,500, you need 1,000. If it's 5,000, you need 500, 10,000, 250. So what's your average commission? Just thought it was a cool thing we'd throw in there. So we know that.
So Olivia, if you'll go right back to that slide back 1 minute. So right here, also what I was coached a year or two back, she was a numbers girl. And so like right here, that's a $10,000 commission. And the question you have to ask yourself, is that my average commission or is that the average commission of the MLS? Because sometimes as a person, you'll have a higher one. And so right now, if you're at 7,500, you just got to add that in there.
Absolutely. It's yours, not the based on the market. Yeah.
But you have to know your numbers to know that.
That's right.
And you might be in a spot where you can physically decide, I'm going to raise my percentages because I can move to this new category because I've just been taking everything. And that's something you'll need to talk with your coach about and discuss, because you want to make sure you're not missing don't have any blind spots on that.
That's right. That's right. All right. And it all starts with appointments. There is a definite beginning and end to that economic model. Your end is the net income that you receive. What causes that net income starts with the beginning activity, appointments. There are appointments to have listing consultations, appointments to have buyer consultations, right? So do you know how many appointments that you need to have? Because the truth is, if you don't have the appointments, nothing else happens. Therefore, they become a critical point of focus for your economic model. For you that have been coaching with me and Kobe for a while, we have you fill out a form every week. It is probably annoying. And guess what? You now know how many appointments you had this past year. That will help you figure out where this is. If you haven't been tracking them, maybe you're newer to coaching or you've been fighting us on that, guesstimate. And yet numbers are the language of business. You are in business. What are you looking at your numbers? Okay. So you're going to focus on conversion rates. Now, when we look at conversion, as it says, it is a skills game. So did you or did your team properly pre-qualify buyers before setting an appointment? Are you only setting appointments with motivated sellers? Have you mastered your presentation and consultation skills? While many top agents report conversion rates as high as 80 to 90%, in this example, we're going to go with a conservative 75% conversion rate. Depending on how long you've been in the business, or if you don't know your conversion rate, I'm going to suggest that you go with 75%. Also, let's say that your goal is to go from 30 closings to 50. Guess what? You're going to have to talk to people outside of your outside of your normal sphere or outside, right? You're bringing in other sources of business. Your conversion rate's not going to be as high at first. So go with 75. You're going to be okay there. So when we look at leads generated, list from leads to listing appointment, they're using a 75% conversion rate. Then we've got another from listings taken and then from listings closed, right? So we're going to put it all together here. Now, remember I said that y'all have a really cool, in your email, you've got a Google Drive. You're going to plug your numbers in and there's some yellow. You're going to plug in the yellow and then it'll spit out the other numbers for you. You don't have to do the calculations. If you chose to do the calculations, it would be beneficial just because you'll understand it at a different level. We're going to use the example of a net income of 1 million. So we're going to start connecting these dots between the numbers and the key activities that lead to closed sales. Because sometimes that's what happens is we just talk about the number. Wait a minute, I always use weight. It's like me saying I want to be 125. Y'all heard me say this. If I want to be 125, there are some key activities that lead to that, right? I can't just walk around going 125. What are my key activities? That's what we're going to focus on. That's what leads to the closed sales. That's what leads to the number on the scale.
So Olivia,
yep.
Can you be real and use $200,000 instead of $1 million?
I can't because this is
Okay, never mind. No, that's fine.
It's and it really is more about the in that formula that I'm going to send you. You're going to put your numbers in.
Well, I have that formula. So I didn't know if this would change. And yeah. I think what you was trying to say just a minute ago to back up to iterate it is you was talking about the 125. You're talking about your lead and lag measure, because if you don't know what the lead measure is, calories in, it's not going to matter. You just can't will it to happen, right? That's right.
So when we look at this model, your net income, right? Or I love this. This is part of what the verbiage from the business planning clinic. It says, and whether it says millionaire agents or successful, profitable agents, right? Don't let their current activities dictate their future income. They set a net income goal and let that number dictate the activities. So whenever you're doing this, you want to go ask yourself, am I willing to do those activities? Because if I'm not, why am I lying to myself about that number? It doesn't happen by osmosis, right? So the model is actually going to begin with your net income goal. And then we're going to work it in reverse. You would then add, right, not subtract your expenses and cost of sale. And that's going to give you your total gross commission income. The total of those three numbers is your gross income for the year. Then you're going to divide that. Sorry, let me make some, right? So then we've got your total GCI. You're going to divide that by the average commission amount earned. If you're do the research. Don't just assume what your average commission is. Go to KW Connect, pull your report, or if you just moved companies or something, go to your MLS, go through all your solds, listings, and then add them all together, and then look at, the average commission, because those are going to change. Figure out what yours is. That doesn't mean that you won't work on bumping it up. You have a track record. Use that and then start working it up. You'll get the total number of transactions required to achieve your net. And
So Olivia,
uh-huh.
so one way of increasing your money, and of course, I'm just talking hypothetically, if you're a listing agent and you're taking 5% listings and giving 3 away or 2.5 away and you keeping that, then you just work on your commission scripts to increase your price, and you're getting paid more for the same amount of work, right?
That's right.
Signing buyer's agency, same thing. And so there's a bunch of different ways to increase your revenue without having to do crazy stuff. It just look at your numbers and you go like, if I'd have had 3% on every commission, I'd have made an extra $50,000 or $100,000. Is that worth working on? Absolutely.
Well, and I thank you for bringing that up, because that is also so, like, sometimes we ever given up commission. Again, are we making a choice? An effective person's going to go, you know what, based on this, okay, maybe I do give it up. Then you're going to go, okay, what could I have done differently for next time? What conversation could I have had? What value could I have come, right? Could I have done additional marketing so I had more buyers than that one? What could I have done, not in a right, wrong, good, or bad, just in the future, so that I wouldn't have had to do that? Because over the year, man, my family didn't get $50,000 because I didn't think about, hey, can I get better at this? Yeah.
So Olivia, Miss Elaine used to work with me and Olivia, a lady y'all don't know. Her first go-to in negotiation was, let's just split the difference between me and you and the deal will close.
Yeah.
She went immediately to that without asking any questions or trying to solve the other problem, right? And so the other, Brian Bentley said he tracked that one year and it cost him $49,000 for just giving up income off of his deal. So he said, I started trying to learn how to negotiate better.
That's right. And that's to let numbers tell a story. All right, guys, we are right here. We've got 5 minutes, and this is like our last slide, so we're good on time. So we divide this number. We get our average commission earned by our top. So they used the average commission. You're going to put yours in there. That gives you your unit goal. And then what they knew is they had to close 350 houses this year. For the millionaire model, we are presuming a balanced business of 50-50. And you'll see here, so if you work for an equal number of buyers and sellers, 50% of the 350 total units on the sell side, 50% of the buyer. And then those percentages, right? Again, your formula that I sent you is just going to automatically do this piece for you. But you're going to use your numbers. That's going to tell you how many, right, per week, per month appointments that you need. Now, something that we're going to be doing in the future is we're going to be looking at, we don't have a goal of working 52 weeks a year. You're going to be deciding how many weeks am I going to work in 2021. So let's say there's 40 weeks that you're going to work. So we're not going to take in we're going to go to mega camp, family reunion, masterminds, family vacations. Then we're going to take 10% off that because you're going to get sick or something's going to come up, so that we don't have, right? It's all part of that. And then we're going to look at that and go, okay, is my structure set up for that? Do I have the correct amount of people, systems in order to make that happen? And then, of course, we got to ask ourselves, how many sellers and buyers would have to list in order to close 175 buyers? We walked through that conversion rate. And again, you're going to get those appointments.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
What's on the screen? Is that based on 52 weeks?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay.
Great question. I'll run the numbers. I believe this is 52 weeks. Yeah.
Okay. So, but what you've sent us, we can run on 40 weeks.
That's correct. So once you run those numbers and it says how many weeks, because this is the thing, is everybody's going to work maybe a different amount of weeks in a year. Because that's the interesting thing. Let's say that you did 30 units and you go, you know what, 30 units is what I want to do next year. Great. A client in my schedule, we did that this year. He had a goal of what he wanted to make. And we said, well, why don't we just get it done by September or by August? Because maybe we don't know what's going to happen in COVID. He hit it. He's now he's doing a stretch goal because he chose to do so. But technically, right, he hit his money and he's great to go. So everybody's weeks are going to be different.
What Olivia, what most people do is whenever I'm interviewing them, I say, how much you want to make next year? They go like, I want to make $100,000. That's what all new agents say. That's their go-to number, right? And then when I ask them this question, they have that deer in the headlight look. I say, so how many hours do you want to work a week to get that? How many weeks in a year do you want to work? How much time do you want to put in to make that $100,000? And they cannot answer that. They don't know if it's a 20-hour week or a 100-hour week. Because they've never been asked that question, never thought about it because they've never run a business before.
That's right.
So when you talk about money, you also got to talk about the time. And I'm not saying you got to have 100 hours. I'm just saying you got to say, how can I fit this in and make it work?
That's right. And that's where your MAPS coach is going to come help you. So
Yep.
Your homework is going to be doing, right? I said part 1 of your business plan and then your economic plan. Now, keep in mind, we're not saying that you're marrying that economic plan and that's how many appointments today. We're going to keep working on it over the next few weeks because we're going to be looking at what is the lead generation for that looks like. What is the plan? Because you might make adjustments and go up, down, around, who knows? This is the last piece, and then this is where we're going to wrap. Analyze your goals. So we talk about what we're going to be looking at. Are your goals big enough, right? How long will it take to reach that goal? The research that KWRI does shows that it can be, that the millionaire agent status can be achieved in as little as 10 years, or it may take as many as 35. On average, it takes most millionaire real estate agents 17 to 18 years to achieve their millionaire status. Now, we're seeing that, I think, trending a lot faster, and yet that's kind of an idea, right? Because I think without that idea, sometimes we go, it'd be like somebody saying, I want to be a doctor and I'm going to go to school and I'm going to be a doctor in 2 years. Well, there's training, there's this. Are you taking that into consideration? Now, this is the other thing I want to say is, should you always increase your goal year after year? The answer might surprise you. If you're not hitting your goals, don't increase them. Look at what is it going to take to hit that.
And
right?
It goes back to Olivia, if you're okay with making $500,000 a year, instead of making a year, can you make it in 6 months?
Yeah, 8 months, whatever that looks like.
I mean, you got to give and take. What you want is your life.
That's right. And then review your goals for the upcoming year against your actual results from the current year to identify what the gap is between where you are and where you want to go with your business. Respect your goals by realistically assessing whether or not you will adjust your activities in order to close that gap, right? So if I'm doing 30 this year and I want to do 50 next year, am I willing to do the activities that it's going to take to close that gap? Now, sometimes doing the activities, interesting enough, isn't more business. Maybe you're showing 20 houses to every buyer before they write an offer. You've got to be willing to have a different conversation, different training, so you're showing 3 to 5 before they write an offer, right? Now I can do more, same amount of time. If you're not hitting your goals in the current year, again, you might decide not to increase them. You might keep them the same until you can consistently hit them. And then this question, does burnout happen when we are hitting our goals? No, it happens when we have the expectation to hit goals, yet we are not hitting them and we feel unable to progress. So in the journey to accomplishing your goals, we sometimes hit plateaus. It takes new systems, new skills, and people to move to the next level. Typically, I'll see somebody hit a plateau and they're not going, wait a minute, what's the next system? Because it's that book, Good to Great. And, what got you here is not going to get you there. Not unless you already plan to go there, but you're going to hit some plateaus. You'll be energized by your goals if you're able to focus on building your skills to meet the challenge and systematically progress. All right. It is 11:32. I know that some of you guys have to go immediately, jump off. If you do, I do have a few minutes. So if you have an aha you'd like to share or a question, I'm here, please ask. And you can either unmute yourself and say it, or you can use the chat box.
I would like to do the aha. I think it's brilliant to say, well, if this has been my goal and this is what I keep hitting year after year, instead of taking 12 months to do it in 8 months. I love that.
Very cool, because all systems love it.
Mhm.
All right, anybody else? An aha or a question?
I'd like to ask a question.
Okay.
If I want to work another 8 years, okay, I'd like to have that 8-year goal and then bring it back down. This is what I want to be making in 5 years. This is what I want to do in 8 years, because I've got to set that golden, handoff, as they call it, that book. I forgot the name of it. Anyway, golden.
Handoff, yeah.
So I know what I need to be doing in 5 years, and then I need to back it down. So you can't just do that in normal increments. So how do you structure that 5-year plan?
So I actually have a formula that I'll email you. I've got to make some quick adjustments, and I'll email you so that you can go out and bring it backwards. I will tell you that you want to go out and bring it backwards. One rule of thumb is a 20% increase every year is definitely sustainable. Now, because this is the thing, to go from, like, let's say your first year in the business, you go 10 to 20. That's doable. 25 to 50. At some point, though, you're not going to have, that's 100% increase year over year. At some point in your business, right, like when you hit 100, to go from 100 to 200 in 1 year, that's, again, that means 2 years ago, because we always hire for 2 years in advance. So that means 2 years ago, you had to have the right people in place to hit the 200. Financially, you probably weren't there yet, right? So at some point, so a 20% increase year over year. And so again, if you look at that millionaire real estate agent where you are, if you do a 20% increase every year, it's very likely that you'll get there. Or you might have, again, depending on where your numbers are now, you might have a couple of years where you're doing a 50 and 70% and then a 20%. So I have a formula that will help you out with that. And I'll be emailing that to everybody in a little bit. Not today, but in the next couple of weeks.
Thanks.
Absolutely. All right. Anybody else? Questions or ahas? And Mon, if there's anybody that put something in the chat box, I just realized that I haven't had my chat box open. So if you guys have put something in there, I apologize. I have not been checking that. I will check it before I end. And then again, and I would love, whether you are jumping off now or if you have time, was this beneficial for you? And even maybe in an email, tell me if there's something else that you would like to see or do. That way, as we go forward, we're always making sure that we're bringing you value. So anybody else before we end? You guys are easy. And then if you are talking, you might be on mute, so you can unmute yourself.
Paul said we're easy because it's lunchtime.
That's right. You're hungry. Somebody just connected to the audio. Were you going to share?
It was me. I will tell you.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, this is where we're going to end. Again, this is going to, I am going to email this recording out. And that way, and if there are any questions, let me know. Thank you for being here. I trust that you got lots of value. Action steps, part 1 of your business plan within the next 2 weeks. Make sure you have that to me. And then your economic model completed. Think of it as we're dating that number. We're not marrying it. We're dating it. We're going to make some other adjustments if we're going to marry it. Okay. All right. Have a great rest of your day. And we'll talk to you after Mega Camp.
Thanks, Olivia.
All right. Thanks. Bye. All right, Mon, that's where we will end, and we did have it recorded, so once it does the thing, if you would actually upload this to, hold on, I'm gonna stop the recording.